Welcome to today's video. This is part 2 of my trouser series where we are on a journey of discovering how the hell to make nicely fitted trousers. And if you have a smaller waist to hip ratio, join me as I try and find the perfect pair of zipped trousers. First off, we are making the traditional zipper, which looks something like this. Hopefully yours comes out a wee bit nicer. And the next zipper project is a lapped zip or hidden zip. Just comes out like that. I'll show you this one as well. Well, hey, stick around to the end if you want to find out my thoughts and feelings. I have linked some tutorials who I think do a way better job at explaining this than I do. I have, to the best of my ability, followed along the instructions within this course. I don't necessarily think that they are the most clear instructions, but I do preface that by saying I do struggle with written instructions. I am a much more better learner at watching YouTube videos than trying to read written instructions, especially with skills and techniques that are new to me. So what is a fly zip front? Fly zip front is the most common closure used in trousers, and it allows for a zip to be used, but it is concealed inside the centre front seam. A fly front includes a fly shield that protects your skin from the back of the zipper. You can also create a fly front with buttons. So the notions you need is a 15 centimetre or 6-inch zip, standard dress zip. The type of zip you choose will be dependent on the fabric you're using. So either like heavyweight for denim or lighter weight for light material. Today we are just going to use a lightweight zipper because that's what I have and that's the fabric that I'm using. We need some lightweight iron-on interfacing. The pieces you need from your skills kit are a pair of either number 1 or number 5. So a pair of either slash or curved, or if you did what I did, you've made one of each. So one curve and one slash, which we have here. You will also need number 7, and you're only cutting out the paper piece, so because this is a top stitching guide, you need number 8, which is this, which you've gone ahead, and you also need to iron on some interfacing onto the wrong side of that as well, which I've gone ahead and done already. And you need number 9, which is the shield, which basically is just slightly bigger than number 8. You also need to go ahead and finish off the crotch seams and inner leg seams with your chosen method. Obviously the chosen method we're using is the overlocker. So that seam, basically, you're going to overlock all the way here and down here. And the same on the other piece as well. So go ahead and finish off those seams as step 1. That is step 1 completed. Take the right pant leg and place the fly front top stitching template number 7 on the crotch seam. So this will be facing right sides up. Pin in place and then take a needle and contrasting thread and hand baste around it, transferring the shape onto the pant. You're going to hand baste all the way around here, or if you're a little bit of a cheat, you're going to go put your sewing machine on the longest stitch length and just do a very long stitch right along the edge. So the reason we are using basting stitch instead of chalk or an erasable fabric pen is because these options are likely to rub off as you sew the fly in. The shape needs to be as accurate as possible as you'll be top stitching it later in the process. So let's pretend I've hand basted that in. Step 3, take the fly facing number 8 and finish off the curved edge with your chosen method, i.e. overlocker. We suggest overlocking to minimise bulk. The piece will be hidden behind the fly shield number 9. When the fly is open, you will see the edge on the inside. If you want to bind it, you can. We suggest using Hong Kong bind to minimise bulk. So I'll go ahead and just overlock this right now. And voila, one overlocked edge. Step 4, take the pair of fly shield number 9 pieces and pin them together with right sides together and stitch around the curved hem with 1 centimetre or 3/8 of a seam allowance. We're then going to clip and grade the seam, focusing on the curved part of the seam. So let's go ahead and clip this. I'm going to grade it first because this just seems more logical. We are then going to turn the flight shield right side out, being careful to turn a curve nicely. Give it a good press before finishing the raw edge with your chosen method. If binding the raw edge, fold the bottom edge of the binding so that it's enclosed. Use a Hong Kong bind and trim back any excess fabric on the underside. Just going to line these raw edges up here, and then we are going to just roll those seams out so there's not an excess of fabric on the inside. Now go ahead and give that a good press with your iron. Again, being careful when you are pressing. If you are using something that's not 100% cotton, like a polycotton like I'm using here today, do not freaking melt it. Like an absolute fool that I am. I am going to finish this off with the serger because I don't want to do any other type of binding. That is that all serged up. Step 5, moving back to the pant legs. With the right sides together, pin the 2 legs together at the front crotch. So right sides together. Line up your crotch pieces. Nicey. Pin from the drill hole to a point 5 to 6 centimeters, 2.5 inches down, following the curve of the seam. Stitch the segment of the crotch with 1.2 or half an inch seam allowance, back stitching to secure. So one of our pattern pieces must have had some information on it. Yep, I missed it because it was under the tape. So this is a reason why you should possibly use clear tape. I missed this here. So I'm just going to go ahead and line my fabric with the paper, and I'm just going to punch through with my awl. Just so it is now marked, and we're going about 2.5 inches down. So I'm just going to get my tape measure out down to about there. I'm just roughly marking that on. So sew from your little hole with 1/2 inch seam allowance round to where you have marked, remembering to backstitch. We only sew part of the crotch so we can sew the fly. The remainder of the crotch will be sewn after the front and back legs of the pants are joined together. Step 6. Placing the fly facing number 8, which is this piece, right sides down on top of the crotch seam, pinning from the top down to the drill hole. You'll notice this point lines up with the point where you started sewing the crotch seam. So for me, this is my slash pocket and the piece that you top stitched. On the fly facing, stitch from the notch at the top down to the drill hole with a 1.2 centimetre or ½ inch seam allowance. Be careful to stop right on the drill hole. This may mean walking the last few stitches. So I can feel where that drill hole is right above my finger. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark it. So you're not going to want to actually sew onto the other half of your trouser leg. So I'm just going to sew ½ inch all the way down. Voila! And like magic, we have done step number 6. Step 7, trim back the seam allowance of the fly facing by 6mm or 1/4 inch. Trying to be careful not to catch the underneath. Because I have cut fabric I shouldn't do before. So I've trimmed that down. I've trimmed that down. So the next stage, flip the fly facing to the right side and understitch the seam allowance of the fly facing, only sewing down to the point where it's attached to the front crotch, so the drill hole. So just go ahead and just stitch right along here. I am now starting to understand why elasticated pants are so popular. Let's get this looking slightly better. So we've gone ahead and we've understitched right along there. Step 8. Take the zipper and place it face down on the fly facing, aligning the edge of the zip tape with the seam between the front pant and the fly facing. You are going to, so where you did that understitching right there is where you're going to align your, position the zip so that the zip stop is 2 centimeters above the bottom edge of the fly facing, and the top of the zip is 1 centimeter down from the top. So the top of the zip is about 1 centimeter down, so where the zip naturally comes to a stop right there, and then the zip stop at the bottom where it's all solid, where it can't go any further, that's about 2 centimeters, which obviously my zip is a certain length, so it might be a wee bit short. So pin in place, folding the bottom of the zip tape on the left. So you're going to fold this piece here up. Now we're going to pin that in place. So we're going to baste along both sides of the zip tape by hand. We're basting here instead of just pins, as we really want the zip to be secure and in the correct place. Basting ensures the zip is positioned correctly and won't move when we machine stitch in place. I am not going to baste because I am lazy. So we are just pinning that in place. That's step 8 done. Step 9, using the zipper foot, stitch down the right side, so on this side, close to the zipper teeth. On the same side of the zip, stitch a second row of stitching on the edge. So we're going to go really close there and then a wee bit further out there. So 2 lines of stitching. So as you can see, I've got my 2 lines of stitches. Step 10, turn the fly facing and zip to the inside of the pants and give the seam a good press. Pin the fly facing in place around the curve from the right side and top stitch in place using the basting stitches as a guide, which I took my basting stitches out by accident because I had to seam rip, but I can sort of see where they're supposed to be. So we're just going to fold this seam back. fold that under. And you should notice that this curve lines up with your basting stitches on the front. Now go ahead and give that a really good press. So I've given that a little bit of a press, and now I'm going to stitch all the way around, all the way up, following my line of basting stitches. Going all the way down and all the way around here. At this point now you can unpick the basting stitches on the zip and the pant front. Step 11. With the front pant pieces right side down, okay, let's turn this over. Turn back the crotch seam on the left side of the opening by 6 mil. So this piece here, I'm just going to fold it over. Press before basting in place by hand. So you're going all the way down to we did that little join there. So right just to the top of there. Now just imagine that I have hand basted that in place. And then we move on to step 12. I'm just going to stick a couple of these in just to keep it pressed under. Flip to the right side, okay. Open the zipper, okay. One zipper opened. And pin the left side of the zipper tape to the left side of the pants with the fold nice and close to the zipper teeth, pin in place. So, undid it, basically. Well, now it looks like the right side, but when you're wearing them, it will be the left. Close the zipper and check that the fly sits nice and flat. Adjust if necessary. Hand baste in place with the zip open. You know what I'm going to say next. I'm not hand basting this. I will put pins in though. So it might be a little bit easier to close it up first, then stick a pin in, just so it's actually in the right place. That's better. So now that is sitting mostly nicely in place. Step 13, close the zip and turn the pants to the wrong side. Place the fly shield, which is your piece number 9, on top of the zip, aligning the edge of the fly shield with the fly facing, number 8, underneath. Pin in place down the straight of the fly shield, pinning through all layers of fabric. Because you're wanting this to cover basically the whole of the zip. So when you're pinning this down, you don't want to pin it through this front piece here, the fly facing on the front, because you won't be able to get in and out of your trousers. Step 14, turn to the right side and open the zipper and baste the fly shield in place through all the layers down the left hand side of the zipper. Remove the pins. So then you are going to baste this through all of these layers and remove the pins. With the zipper foot then, stitch through all the layers on the left side as you were wearing the pants, and close the zipper teeth. Start with the zip open and then close as you get closer to the bottom. So after you basted, you're then going to stitch this zip down through all of these layers. Once you've done that, it says remove all the basting and give it a good press from this side. So I'll just give you a quick look what that looks like. I'm going to go give this a really good press. Step 15, with the wrong side, pin the fly shield to the fly facing, and with the zipper foot, sew a small line of stitchings to enclose the fly.
These stitches should only go through the fly facing and fly shield and not through the zip front or front pant. So in the diagram it just goes just round here. From round here just up like that. It says you might find it easier to make these stitches from the underside of the fly facing. So you're just going to put a couple of stitches in around here. So I did that by folding the pocket away and just stitching from right there. So to go through the fly shield and the fly facing. And then that is apparently it. And then voila, we have one working fly. And then from the back, I think that zip is supposed to be just hidden up there, but we'll pretend that it is. So then when you're undoing your fly, you're then protected. So I go, okay, yep, I need the loo. I take my pants off. Well, hey, I can now take my pants on off. So due to my refusal to do any sort of basting, it has sort of weirdly bunched up at the bottom. That's probably down to my own inaccuracies. But for the first go, it's not too bad. Now let's move on to the lapped zip. Lapped zips are also sometimes called concealed zippers and use a regular dress zip and are sewn in such a way that the zip is enclosed or hidden inside a seam. They're often used in pants and skirts as regular dress zips and often more durable than invisible zips. In pants, the zip is often placed in the side seam. Notions, you're going to need a 20 centimetre or 8-inch trouser zip or a standard dress zip or similar. Okay, so as we're sewing samplers, we recommend using the zip length that you have available. You can shorten the dress zip by hand sewing bar tacks across the zip at the desired length and cutting off any excess. You need your welt pocket base, 1 pair. It's this piece. You're ignoring the drill holes on this piece apparently. Or cut fabric approximately 10-inch by 14-inch, which is 25 centimetres by 35 centimetres. So I've got my 2 pieces here. Step 1, finish the edges of the seams where the zip is going to go through. This is a great opportunity to use a Hong Kong bind for a really beautiful finish. I'm going to overlock. Are we surprised? Step 2, work out the length of the zip opening. Put the top of the zip 1 centimetre down from the top edge. This is leaving seam allowance for the waistband or facing. You can mark this 1 centimetre seam allowance or 3/8 of an inch with chalk if you find it helpful when positioning the zip. Pin a horizontal pin on the fabric next to the end of the zip, slightly above the stop. This is the length we will make the opening for the zip. So 1, 2, 3.
We've done step 1 and we've overlocked the 2 edges on our fabric. With our fabric then facing right sides up, we are going to put the top of the zip 1 centimetre from the top of the edge. This is leaving seam allowance for the waistband or facing. You can mark this 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch with chalk if you want, which I've gone and done there. So this will help the positioning of the zip right here. Place a horizontal pin on the fabric next to the end of the zip, slightly above the zip stop, which is about here. I'm just going to put a pin in right here. This is the length we will make for the opening of the zip. So step 3, pin the pieces together with right sides together. Place 2 pins close together at the end of the zip opening to mark it and continue pinning along the seam. So just where we put our previous pin, we're going to stick in 2 pins. I'm going to stitch the seam from the bottom, which is this end, which is closer to your 2 pins, with a 2 cm or 3/4 inch seam allowance. When you get to the double pins, we're going to do a little bit of a back stitch, and then we're going to increase your stitch length to a basting stitch, which for my machine is a maximum number 4, and sew the remainder of the seam. Back stitch at the end to ensure that the seam holds for now. Step 4 is going to press the seam allowance open. So go ahead and give that a nice good press. And now we are going to position the zip face down on the seam with the zip coil in the centre of the seam, right in the centre here. Make sure that the top of the zip is 1 cm or 3/8 inch down from the top. This is where the marking might help you. Pin the right side of the zip, that will be the right-handed side when the zip is flipped to the right of the zip tape in place. My mark is just there, I want it just there. Okay, we're going to pin this top side here, making sure that we are keeping the zip nice in the centre. We are going to machine base the edge of the zip in place using a zip foot. We're just going to go right down this edge here. So we're only doing it on the seam allowance. Don't zip it to this. So most accurate like that. I'm just going to zip, pin, base this here. Step 5. Nicely basted. Like a turkey. Flip the zip to the right sides. Let's flip this over. Like this. So we're going to flip the zip up basically. Turning the seam allowance and creating a fold. Bring the fold nice and close to the zip teeth and carefully pin in place. You can press the fold if you like. Be sure to turn down the heat of the iron so you don't melt the zip. So you're going from this and you're going to flip the zip up. And then this seam allowance here is then being turned down. I think. Flip to the right side, turning back the seam allowance. Yep, I've turned it back. So pressed it nicely under. Bring the fold, so this fold here. So you're going to scoot it up nice and close to the zip teeth and carefully pin in place. Stick a couple of pins in and I can show you what it looks like from the back. And then you're going to stitch along the fold with the zipper foot. So from the back, this is what it looks like. And then you're going to stitch right along here. So we've sewn all the way up here, which is then pressed this seam down like this. Once the piece, open out the piece of fabric so that seam allowance is sitting flat and the zip is face down in the seam. Step 6, turn the garment right side out and press the seam. Okay. Mark a stitching guideline across the bottom of the zip and then up 1 cm or 3/8 inch from the seam. So the bottom of the zip, which is right here, and then 3/8 inch. Hand based along the guideline. Position the zip front to the right of the needle, top stitch close to the basting stitches, pivoting at the corner. Be careful to stitch just the side of the basting stitches rather than stitch through them so that basting stitches are easy to remove. So that will then end up sewing down the other half of the zip. So you're hand basting that then, because you do still want to make sure that your zip is nicely in the middle. As you can see, the zipper tape ends up being the width of that 2 cm seam allowance. So sometimes it gets difficult to sew near the top because the zipper is in place. So you may choose to then go ahead and unpick some of the basting stitches that hold in the seam closed and then pull the zipper out the way. So we're just going to carefully undo some of these stitches. I'm just going to tuck the zip out the way and then carry on stitching all the way to the top. Then you can go ahead and just take out your basting stitches. Step 9, we're going to open the seam by removing the machine basting stitches and giving the seam a good press. So take out the rest of your basting stitches. And this will open up your zip. And then just try and get rid of all the bloody threads. So let's see if this works, shall we? So fold it back and you have one very nice seam. And then this is what it looks like from the back. It's far, far from perfect. So tweezers can help if you're struggling to remove some of the threads, which is definitely good advice. That was a bit of a challenge, wasn't it? That I struggled with that, really did struggle. I think I'm going to try and make a couple more of these, especially the zipper front, the first project, because it's just some of my measurements are a wee bit out. I think it needed a bit more precision. Which I don't think I took enough time with it or slowed down enough, but I do want to try out some of the YouTube videos and see if that will just give me a bit of a neater look, because I just think there's a lot of hand basting there and some of the videos don't show that. But then that was only my first attempt, so before I get to like my final trouser project, that's definitely a skill I need to practice, and I think after doing it 4 or 5 times my zippers will be then so much neater, and I will not then be trying to wear a pair of trousers where it's all slightly wrong and slightly out, and then I'm just gonna get annoyed and not wear them. My goal is a perfect pair of fitting trousers that I will absolutely adore, and they will be the best thing in my life, trouser wise. So that they were challenging. But it's been a long time since I've really sat down and tried to learn anything new, and it is a challenge when you know and you're not perfect at it and you're messing up. It's hard to be like, okay, this is something new. You don't have to be perfect straight off the bat. Next video we'll be looking at patch pockets. Patch pockets are lovely and so much easier, not gonna lie, so much easier than zips. And I think we will possibly look at doing some binding as well, because I do want to cut out these sample pieces again to then start practice on the zippers, because I am serious about developing my skills and not just being shit, basically, being rubbish. And that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and do check out the videos that I've linked if you are serious about trying to put zips and things, basically.